You ever thought about kingdom debt, kingdom lending and borrowing? It's a subject you don't hear many people talk about, and yet a lot of people are in debt, struggling with debt, or would like to loan for something, and they don't know really what the Bible says about it. I'm reading this amazing book at the moment by Dr. Dave Burrows, who I met when I was in the Bahamas, and it's on money and wealth. And he goes through the kingdom economy, operates through these things: tithes and offerings, seed time and harvest, replenish, productivity, investment, commonwealth, and supernatural supply. I'm particularly interested in commonwealth because the Commonwealth Games are on at the moment and Australia is doing so well. We are beating the rest of the Commonwealth, which I love. Aussies love being the underdogs, the smallest nation, the one that's least resourced, but having ingenuity and tenacity and resilience and rising above. So there are lots of nations that are smaller than us in the Commonwealth, but the big ones like England, Wales, Scotland, like that, they're all way below, Canada even below. So anyway, I love seeing Aussies win and be the head and not the tail. And I love looking at kingdom things. But I was surprised that in this list there isn't lending, because lending is mentioned a lot of times in the Bible. So I'm going to give you a few quick mentions. The big one, I guess, is in Deuteronomy 28 when it talks about abundance versus poverty, or blessings versus curses. And it says you will lend to many nations. As part of the blessing, you will lend. And it doesn't say, look, you should just keep that small, keep that narrow, confined, restricted. No, it says you will lend to many nations. How many of you know that a nation is going to want to borrow a lot of money? Okay, they're not going to be like a little $1,000 or $2,000 loan when you're lending to a nation. When you're lending to many nations, it's going to be millions, billions, even trillions these days. So the Deuteronomy 28 one is really good to look at. As part of the curse, it says you will be a borrower. They will lend to you and you will not be able to lend to them. So the ability to lend is definitely part of the blessing, not part of the curse. And it's not something that it wants to be like a little sprinkle of salt. It wants to be the whole meal. It wants to be lending to many nations. It wants to be a big deal. I was reading just this morning in Luke 6 where Jesus is teaching, and he commands people to lend even to their enemies. So lending is definitely part of the kingdom that Jesus talked about as well. In the Psalms, the psalmist describes the righteous as those who are ever merciful and lend generously. Not just give generously, but lend. Proverbs states that being kind to the poor is like lending to the Lord. So lending, some people think that debt is a sin. I mean, that is just so wrong. You would definitely not be sinning to the Lord if you were being kind to the poor. No, lending is part of the kingdom. It's part of God's economic system. In Deuteronomy 15, it instructs God's people to open their hands and freely lend whatever their poor brother needs. Lend whatever. So it's not just about money as well. It's lending whatever. Any resource that you have, you can lend. And in the Apocrypha, there's actually guidelines on lending and borrowing. So extra biblical. I'm not going to talk about that today, but I just wanted to mention that lending is part of kingdom resourcing and financing. And lending might be something that you can do. It's actually really common for people to lend. Probably in your family, you've lent money to them, they've lent money to you. It's really casual. Hey, can I borrow this? Because you know they'll pay you back, and it's not a big deal. And really, it should be like that in the kingdom, much more casual. But You can also have just a really simple agreement. Proverbs has some great guidelines for lenders and for borrowers. And it says, like, take things away from someone if they're going to lend to a stranger without any guarantee. Like, don't be unwise in your lending, but be wise. And so you can have agreements. If you are lending to businesses, particularly in my state, New South Wales, in Australia, there's not as many restrictions as lending to consumers. But if you're just lending to family as well, you can just have a simple agreement. And so it's really easy to do. If you'd like more help with that, then get in touch and I will help you set up to become a private lender and really get the aim of it, the kingdom purpose of it, which is something that Dave Burrows really does well in this book, is to talk about circulation. I think Pat Mesiti does a great job of talking about circulation as well. Everything that is healthy and alive is usually circulating. So, like, the plants will take energy from the sun and from the soil, and they will turn it into growth and fruit, and there's a movement of resources that happens in nature and in the kingdom. Anything that is dead or stagnant is not really kingdom. It needs to be circulating. And when God made us in his image, I always used to find it strange. Why does he talk about birds and fishes and cattle? But he sums it up nicely and he says, you'll have dominion over everything that moves on the earth. And so anything that is moving is something that is part of your kingdom dominion. And it doesn't necessarily have to be birds or fish or cattle. It can be resources and finances, particularly in this digital age. Finances can move so quickly, and that's the whole point of some companies, is to help trades and transactions happen really, really quickly. There's whole cable companies and trading companies that are built on the speed of the circulation of money. So today, I just wanted to remind you that yes, there is sowing and reaping, there is giving, there is circulation, there is replenishment, there is harvesting, there is productivity, there is commonwealth and supernatural supplies. I love supernatural supplies, but there's also lending, and it's not just something that is mentioned in the Old Testament or in just the wisdom books or just in the New. It's something that Jesus himself spoke about, and he didn't speak about just doing it to family. He said you should be lending even to people that are your enemies, that hate you, that curse you. So it's very broad, and that's the way it always is when it's talking about lending. Many nations. It's not something that should just be narrow and confined. So if you're already a private lender and you'd like help scaling that, or if you're thinking about doing it, you don't know where to start, then any of those in between, get in touch. I'd love to talk to you about kingdom lending. I believe it can be a blessing to many of you and get your money circulating for the kingdom. Bless you today. See ya.